Ladies and gentlemen, each day we wake into a world shaped not only by events but by what stirs within us. Our fears, our hopes, our longing to matter. Yet beneath the noise, beneath the masks we wear to meet the demands of the world, there is a quiet force. Steady, unwavering, transformative. That force is love. I do not mean love in the fleeting, romantic sense. I speak of love as a principle of wholeness, a call toward inner unity. Love is not just an emotion. It is a movement of the soul toward its own fulfillment. When we love authentically, ourselves, others, our work, we do not escape pain, but we transcend it. We do not avoid failure, but we reframe it. Success, then, is not found in the applause of others, but in our commitment to embrace life as it is and shape it with care. And this begins with the daily act of listening to the still voice within. Every outer journey toward success must begin with an inward reconciliation, a coming together of who we are and who we're meant to be. Let love be the daily guide. Let it teach you not just how to achieve, but why to achieve, not just how to endure life, but how to shape it with meaning. In the modern world, love is often spoken of in fleeting phrases, captured in songs, or tangled in romantic ideals. It is frequently reduced to a feeling, an emotional high that surges in the presence of another, or a desire that clings tightly to the object of its affection. But to live in such a narrow understanding is to miss the deeper, more enduring essence of love. Love, in its most transformative form, is not merely a reaction to what is outside of us. It is a profound force moving within us, a gravitational pull toward inner wholeness. It is a principle of integration, the hidden current that seeks to bind together what has been fragmented within the self. Love, in this sense, is not something we find. It is something we become. At the core of every human being is a tension between what we show to the world and what we hide, between the roles we play and the truths we bury. From childhood, we are shaped by expectations, molded by culture, told who we ought to be. In this process, parts of ourselves are pushed aside. Desires we were told were shameful, dreams that seemed unrealistic, emotions deemed too inconvenient. These rejected pieces do not disappear. They live on in the shadowy corners of our psyche, waiting not just to be noticed but to be welcomed. This is where love begins, not as an outward search for completion, but as the inward act of recognition and reconciliation. To love oneself truly is to turn toward the inner exile, to sit with the parts we've tried to silence. It is not indulgence or narcissism, it is courage. It is spiritual maturity. When we dare to approach ourselves not with judgment, but with compassion, we begin the work of inner healing. This is not a quick process. It does not come from affirmations alone or superficial acceptance. It demands presence, patience, and honesty. A lover's inner wholeness is the path of the self becoming itself. To walk this path, we must stop trying to be what others need us to be and begin to uncover who we truly are. This requires solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude, the sacred space where the inner voice can speak. In that space, we learn to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of truth, between the noise of the ego and the whisper of the soul. It is in solitude that we feel the first stirrings of authentic love, not based on conditions, not given only when we meet certain standards, but a love that says, even this part of me is worthy. Even this fear, this wound, this weakness belongs. This kind of love does not make us passive or complacent. On the contrary, it gives us the strength to grow. It is only when we feel fundamentally accepted that we are free to change. Not out of shame, but out of longing to embody our full potential. Holiness does not mean perfection. It means integration. It means no longer being at war with ourselves. It means the inner critic gives way to the inner guide, and every emotion, even the uncomfortable ones, has a place at the table. There is a great paradox in this. The more we turn inward with love, the more outwardly alive we become. We do not retreat from the world. We engage it more fully. Why? Because the fragmentation that once weakened us is being healed. Because the inner contradictions that created confusion are being resolved. Because love has replaced fear as the center of our inner architecture. In this state of wholeness, success is no longer defined by comparison or competition. It becomes an expression of alignment. You no longer seek approval, you radiate authenticity. You no longer manipulate circumstances to be seen. You live in such a way that your presence speaks for itself. You do not chase success, you become it in your very being. What's more, this inner love does not end with the self. Once you have learned to see yourself clearly and tenderly, you will begin to see others with new eyes. Compassion is born not from theory, but from experience. When you have sat with your own shame, you cannot mock another's. When you have forgiven yourself, you begin to release others from the burden of your projections. This is how love expands, organically, silently, profoundly. And yet this path is not without its trials. As you walk toward wholeness, you will encounter resistance, internally and externally. Parts of you will cling to old patterns because they feel safe. Some people in your life may resist your growth because it unsettles the roles they've come to expect from you. But love, true love, is a force that cannot be undone. Once awakened, it moves with purpose. It dismantles false identities, it calls forth your essence, it reshapes your future. This is why daily guidance must come from love, not sentimentality, but the disciplined practice of seeing, accepting, and integrating the self. Every morning, you have the opportunity to return to yourself. Before the world imposes its definitions of worth, before the demands of productivity drown out the soul, take a moment to ask, what part of me needs love today? Perhaps it is the part that doubts, the part that feels behind, the part that fears failure. Give that part your attention, not to fix it, but to hear it. That alone is healing. In time, this practice becomes a way of life. Love no longer needs to be searched for because it has become the ground on which you stand. You will feel it not only in your heart, but in your voice, your choices, your work. You will discover that success is not a finish line, it is a state of being that arises when love has made its home in you. And so, do not look outward for permission to begin this journey. Do not wait for love to arrive from another. The invitation is already here, and it is inward. You are not broken. You are behind. You are becoming. And love is not the prize at the end. It is the path itself. In a world captivated by performance, praise, and productivity, it is tempting, almost inevitable, to chase after achievement as though it were the supreme measure of our worth. We are conditioned from an early age to believe that what we do defines who we are. Titles, accolades, social recognition. These become the currency of value. And yet, beneath the weight of all this striving, a quiet question often lingers. Is this truly me? The question of authenticity is not one of surface behavior, but of essence. It is not about being original for the sake of novelty, or defiant for the sake of difference. Rather, authenticity is the alignment of your outer actions with your inner truth. It is the courage to be who you are before the world tells you who you should be. And more than that, it is the recognition that no achievement, however grand, will ever satisfy the soul if it requires you to betray your deepest self. There is a certain hollowness that comes with living a life of achievement disconnected from authenticity. You may meet expectations, surpass goals, and receive applause, but inside there is dissonance. The mask grows heavier. The persona, the image you've built, begins to take on a life of its own. People celebrate you for a version of yourself that doesn't quite feel real. And with every success that is won at the cost of your truth, the distance between who you are and who you pretend to be only widens. This disconnection does not happen all at once. It unfolds subtly, through 1,000 small compromises. You silence your instincts in meetings to appear agreeable. You choose a career path because it seems prestigious, not because it calls to your soul. You pursue relationships that look good on paper, but leave you spiritually malnourished. you begin to live for the expectations of others, parents, peers, society, and eventually you forget that your life is yours. Authenticity before achievement is not a rejection of success. It is the foundation of meaningful success. It asks you to slow down before you speed up, to ask why before you chase the what, to look inward before you leap outward. It invites you to peel back the layers of conditioning and inquire, what do I truly value? What brings me alive? What kind of life would I choose if no one else were watching? Answering these questions is not easy. It requires a confrontation with fear of disapproval, fear of inadequacy, fear of failure. But these fears only hold power when they remain unnamed. The moment you bring them into the light, you begin to see that they are not walls, but doors. To walk through them is to reclaim the authority of your own being. There is a profound shift that occurs when you begin to live from your inner truth, rather than from external validation. Your actions become infused with clarity. Your work carries weight, not because it conforms, but because it resonates. Your voice becomes distinct, not because it's louder, but because it's real. And most importantly, your sense of peace grows. Not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. We often think that authenticity will cost us too much, that if we truly show up as ourselves, we will be rejected or misunderstood. And yes, sometimes that happens. But what is far more costly is a lifetime spent in hiding. The soul does not forget when it is silenced. It protests, first with quiet discomfort, then with disillusionment, and eventually with despair. Anxiety, burnout, and even success fatigue often stem not from doing too much, but from doing what is misaligned for too long. Living authentically demands the humility to accept your limitations and the bravery to embrace your unique strengths. It means honoring your natural rhythms rather than conforming to someone else's timeline. It means choosing depth over display, substance over spectacle. And in doing so, you create a kind of integrity within yourself, a wholeness that no external reward can replace. But authenticity is not static. It is a living, evolving relationship with yourself. As you grow, your truth deepens. What once felt right may eventually feel constrictive. This, too, is part of the journey. You are not meant to be consistent in the eyes of others. You are meant to be faithful to the unfolding of your inner life. Authenticity requires ongoing reflection, a willingness to shed old skins, and the trust that your worth is not defined by what remains familiar. In practical terms, living authentically means learning to say no when your soul says no, even if your fear says yes. It means creating space for your own voice in a world that's constantly. This integration is the essence of healing, not becoming someone new, but remembering who you truly are beneath the wounds. When you allow pain to become your guide rather than your enemy, your perspective shifts. You begin to see life not as a series of obstacles, but as a series of invitations. Each difficulty becomes a mirror, each heartbreak a doorway, each fall a reminder of your depth. In this way, even the most difficult seasons of life can become sacred, because they strip away the false and leave only what is real. Of course, this journey is not linear. Pain comes in waves. Healing is not about getting rid of suffering forever. It is about building the capacity to meet it with wisdom, with presence, with love. You will fall. You will forget. But you will also rise. Again and again. Not because you have mastered life, but because you have learned to remain open within it. The world may still reward surface achievement. It may still promote the appearance of success over inner substance. But you will know a different truth. That true success is the ability to face yourself fully, to walk through pain without abandoning your soul, to let suffering carve you into someone more whole, more awake, more human. And in this knowing, you become a quiet presence in the world, not loud or grand, but deeply rooted. Others will feel it, not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer afraid of the questions. You carry within you the unspoken assurance that pain is survivable, meaningful, even beautiful in its own strange way. You become a light not because you avoid darkness, but because you have walked through it and emerged more whole. So do not rush to escape your pain. Do not cover it in noise or drown it in distraction. Sit with it, listen, let it speak, let it shape you, let it burn away what is false. You are not broken. You are becoming, and pain is not the end of your story. It is the place where your true story begins. In the modern world, it is easy, almost inevitable, to be pulled outward. The noise is constant. Notifications, obligations, opinions, demands. We are conditioned to react, to perform, to keep up. In all of this, something essential is lost, the quiet, inner voice that speaks not in shouts but in whispers, the voice of the soul. This voice does not compete for your attention. It will not demand or shout over the world's noise. It waits, patiently, until you are still enough to hear it. Daily inner listening is not a luxury. It is not something reserved for monks or mystics. It is a vital human need. Just as the body needs food and sleep, the soul needs silence, reflection, and inward attention. Without it, we live disconnected from our own lives. We may be busy, productive, even successful, but inwardly we feel vague, unanswered, or lost. To listen inwardly each day is to create space for your inner life to breathe. It is a commitment to turn toward yourself with curiosity rather than criticism. It is the sacred act of remembering that beneath all your roles, achievements, and responsibilities, you are a being with a center, and that center must be heard. The modern person often suffers not from lack of opportunity, but from a severed relationship with the self. We rush from one thing to another, always consuming, always projecting outward. And yet, the most important messages, the ones that would offer clarity, healing, or direction, are already within us. We simply haven't made the space to receive them. The practice of daily inner listening begins with intention. It is not about technique or dogma. It is about presence. A few minutes each day, not to analyze, not to plan, not to perfect, but simply to be with yourself, to breathe, to ask, what is moving in me right now, and to actually listen for the answer. This listening is subtle. The soul does not speak in spreadsheets or deadlines. It speaks in images, emotions, body sensations, symbols, intuitions. Sometimes it speaks through discomfort, sometimes through longing, sometimes through a deep sense of peace that cannot be explained. To listen to the inner voice requires a different kind of attention, one that is receptive, soft, non-controlling. You must resist the urge to judge or interpret too quickly. You must be willing to sit with ambiguity, to allow the message to unfold in its own time. Often, what we hear in this space is not easy. It might be a grief we haven't acknowledged, a desire we've been too afraid to name, a boundary we've been too afraid to set. Inner listening requires courage. It requires honesty, not because it will always feel good, but because it will always bring you closer to what is real. There is great wisdom in beginning the day with this kind of listening. Before the outer world rushes in, there is a threshold, a quiet moment where you can choose to turn inward. Even 5 minutes of honest presence can shift the trajectory of your entire day. You may notice an inner tension you didn't realize was there. You may receive a simple clarity, I need to rest today, or need to speak up, or I'm afraid, but I want to move forward anyway. These insights may seem small, but they are profound. They are guideposts from your deeper self, truths that can reorient your entire life if you learn to follow them. Inner listening is also an antidote to the compulsions of the ego. The ego thrives on comparison, performance, control. It seeks to prove, to impress, to protect. But the soul has no interest in proving anything. It wants only to grow, to unfold, to become more whole. When you listen inwardly, you begin to loosen the grip of ego narratives. You start to live from a quieter, more rooted place. Not because you've figured everything out, but because you've reconnected with the source within you. This is not always dramatic. Often it is quiet, ordinary. a moment of stillness before breakfast, a journal entry written in the early hours, a walk in solitude where you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And what am I afraid to admit? These practices do not require special conditions. They require only that you turn your attention inward and stay there long enough for the truth to rise. There will be resistance. The mind will want to race ahead. The world will pull at you with urgency. But this practice is an act of devotion. You are saying to yourself, each day you matter. Your truth matters. I will make space for you. Over time, something inside begins to soften. The body relaxes. The heart opens. The messages become clearer. You begin to trust yourself, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. And gradually, this inner listening becomes not just a practice, but a way of being. You move through the world with greater clarity. You make choices from alignment rather than fear. You speak with more authenticity. You rest when your body says rest. You risk when your soul says leap. You no longer look outside yourself for constant validation. You've re-established the most essential relationship of all, the one with your own inner life. In doing so, you also become more available to others. You listen more deeply because you've learned to listen to yourself. You become less reactive because you've become more self-aware. You offer presence, not performance. People feel this in you, not because you speak louder, but because you carry depth. You become someone who listens, even when others do not yet have words. The path of daily inner listening is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming real. And realness is messy, tender, dynamic. Some days, you will sit in silence and feel peace. Other days, you will sit in silence and feel nothing at all. Some days, what you hear may unsettle you. That's okay. The point is not to control what you find, but to stay in relationship with it. Over time, this relationship becomes the foundation of a life lived with integrity. We cannot control the world around us. We cannot predict what each day will bring. But we can choose to begin each day from within. We can choose to return to ourselves, not once, but again and again, until the habit becomes second nature. So begin today. Pause, breathe, listen. Not to the outer noise, but to the quiet truth within. Ask, what is arising in me? What needs to be felt? What am I avoiding? What is my inner voice trying to tell me? And then wait. Not for answers you can control, but for wisdom you can trust. In this daily return, you will find something greater than peace. You will find presence. And from presence, everything real in your life will begin to grow. There is a force beneath all things that gives life its meaning, its direction, and its radiance. This force is not confined to emotion, romance, or sentimentality. It does not live only in poetry or dreams. It is present wherever something new is being born, from the creation of a child to the creation of a work of art, from the transformation of a broken heart to the awakening of a soul. This force is love. Love is often misunderstood as something passive or tender, something that flows when conditions are right. But in its true form, love is wild, generative, and creative. It is the source of all becoming. It is not an accessory to life. It is life. Every act of true creativity, whether it takes the form of a painting, a conversation, a gesture of care, or a personal transformation, emerges from the presence of love. To understand love as a creative force, we must first move beyond the narrow frameworks that have been placed upon it. Love is not limited to romance or family or the pursuit of pleasure. It is not restricted to certain people or moments. It is not merely a feeling. It is an orientation, a way of relating to the world, to others, and most importantly, to oneself. Love, in its most potent form, is a commitment to nurture life in all its forms. It is the desire to see something or someone unfold into their full potential. When we love, we do not control. We invite. We do not force. We make space. We do not possess. We witness. We support. We hold. This is the sacred task of the creative force, to bring forth what was hidden, to make visible what was silent, to awaken what was dormant. This power begins within. Before it can move outward into the world, it must be kindled inwardly. The first act of creation is the creation of self, and the first condition of that creation is love, not vanity, not self-obsession, but a quiet and radical willingness to meet oneself honestly and to respond with compassion. Without this internal foundation, any external act of creativity risks becoming hollow, performative, or disconnected. When you love yourself, not in the shallow sense of indulgence, but in the deep sense of honoring your truth, you become fertile ground for creativity. You begin to trust your instincts. You listen to your inner voice. You become willing to make, to risk, to fail, to learn. Love fuels the courage to begin, the patience to continue, and the openness to be changed in the process. Creativity is never sterile. It is messy, vulnerable, uncertain. But love holds the space for this. Love says, free it anyway. Love says, begin again. Love says, even if no one sees it, even if it's imperfect, even if it scares you, this matters. Without love, we create from fear of being unseen, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough. With love, we create from joy, from integrity, from aliveness. This is why the most powerful art, the most enduring beauty, the most transformative actions are born not from ambition, but from love. They carry an invisible resonance because they were made from an inner alignment with something greater than ego. They are not concerned with attention. They are concerned with truth. And because of that, they touch others, not superficially, but deeply. Love as a creative force is not confined to the artist or the philosopher. It belongs to everyone. Every human being is a creator, not only of things, but of experience, of space, of connection, of transformation. A parent who listens fully to a child is creating safety. A teacher who sees a student's potential is creating courage. A person who dares to live their truth in a conformist world is creating possibility. Every moment, we are shaping the world. The question is, from what source are we shaping it? When love is our source, we do not seek to dominate, to impress, or to fix. We seek to nourish. We offer what is real. We trust that authenticity is more powerful than performance. We know that the smallest action infused with presence can create ripples far beyond what we can measure. But love is not always soft. It is not always gentle. Love, when it is true, can be fierce. It can say no, where boundaries are needed. It can end what is false to make space for what is real. It can disrupt. It can destroy illusions. Love is not compliance. It is clarity. And this, too, is part of its creative powering. It clears away what no longer serves, so that something new can be born. Creativity, then, is not always about adding. It is just as often about subtracting, about letting go of what is inauthentic, about unlearning, about shedding layers of fear and conditioning. This, too, is the work of loving, to reveal, to refine, to return you to yourself. In relationships, love becomes a creative exchange. When two people approach each other not to fill a void, but to share their fullness, something larger is created between them. A third space emerges, a space of shared growth, transformation, mutual evolution. This is not love as dependency, it is love as co-creation. In work, love becomes the energy behind meaningful contribution. It fuels craftsmanship, innovation, insight. When we love what we do, we are more than efficient. We are inspired. We bring care, imagination, and a sense of purpose. We are not just completing tasks, we are shaping reality. We are leaving a trace of soul in what we make. In healing, love becomes the force that rebuilds what was broken. It does not erase the pain, but it surrounds it with presence. It does not deny the wound. It creates space for it to be seen, understood, integrated. Healing is not a process of returning to who we were. It is a process of becoming who we are now capable of being, and this becoming is made possible only through love. At its core, love as a creative force is about possibility. It sees what is, but it also sees what could be. It does not flinch at limitation, it finds beauty in it. It does not rush, it trusts the timing of becoming. Love is not impatient with growth, it honors the process. This is why love cannot be faked. It is recognized not by words, but by what it creates. So ask yourself each day, what am I creating from? Fear or love? Performance or truth? Ego or essence? These are not abstract questions. They determine the quality of your life. They determine the impact of your presence. They determine whether your life becomes an echo of others or an expression of something uniquely your own. Love is not an end state. It is a practice, a current, a movement toward wholeness. And when you live in alignment with it, not just as a feeling, but as a force, you become creative in the deepest sense, not merely as a maker of things, but as a transformer of life itself. The world tells us that success is something we must pursue, aggressively, continuously, and above all visibly. We are taught to measure it in numbers: see income, titles, possessions, recognition. From an early age, we are given the blueprint. Achieve more, accumulate more, be seen more, and perhaps then you will feel complete. But somewhere along the way, many people realize a quiet truth. The ladder they've been climbing leans against a wall that leads nowhere meaningful. Because real success is not measured by external achievements, but by the depth of one's inner life. Real success is not found in surpassing others. It is found in becoming fully, wholly, and unapologetically oneself. It is not an arrival point defined by applause, but a continuous unfolding, an inward journey of self-realization. To realize the self is to come into conscious relationship with all that you are, your light and your shadow, your gifts and your limitations, your aspirations and your fears. It is the process of discovering not who you think you should be, but who you already are at the deepest level. In this sense, success is not something to be chased, but something to be revealed. It is the truth of your being, gradually uncovered through self-awareness, experience, and honest inner work. This is not the kind of success you can perform. It is not tailored for public consumption. It does glitter on resumes or social media profiles. It is quiet, rooted, and profound. It is the success of waking up each morning with clarity about who you are and what matters to you. The success of making choices that are aligned with your values, even when they go against the current. The success of honoring your truth, even when it costs you the comfort of conformity. Self-realization is not a state of perfection. It is a state of integration. It means no longer living in pieces. One version of yourself at work, another at home, another in solitude. It means becoming undivided. And in that wholeness, there is power, not the power to dominate, but the power to live meaningfully, courageously, and authentically. Yet the path to this kind of success is not easy. It requires unlearning much of what you were taught. It requires you to stop performing for the expectations of others and to begin listening to the inner voice you've long silenced. It asks you to confront discomfort, to sit with uncertainty, to accept responsibility for your own becoming. But in exchange, it offers something extraordinary: a life that feels real, a life that feels like yours. Success as self-realization asks, am I aligned with what is true for me, rather than, am I ahead of others? It values depth over display, process over product, and integrity over image. It recognizes that the soul's growth cannot be measured by the metrics of the marketplace. It honors the individual path, even when that path is misunderstood by those who still define success by speed, scale, and visibility. You begin to make decisions not from fear or social pressure, but from inner clarity. You no longer accept roles, relationships, or responsibilities that require you to shrink or fragment yourself. You let go of the chase for approval, and you step into the slower, steadier work of alignment. Your life begins to take on a different rhythm, less frantic, more intentional. You become less interested in impressing and more committed to expressing. In this space, failure takes on a new meaning. It is no longer a mark of inadequacy, but a necessary part of the learning process. When success is self-realization, even your setbacks serve your growth. They reveal where you were out of alignment. They force you inward, into deeper honesty. They become part of your unfolding. You are no longer shattered by failure because your worth is no longer attached to outcomes. You've begun to root your sense of value in something your unshakable, your connection to your own soul. This doesn't mean giving up on external goals. It means approaching them differently. You still work, create, and contribute, but not to prove your worth. You do it because your inner self compels you to. Your actions become expressions of your essence. You do not just build a career, you shape a vocation. You do not just pursue success, you embody meaning. And this is the turning point. When what you do flows from who you are, rather than being a substitute for it. The journey of self-realization is also deeply relational. As you become more honest with yourself, you become more honest with others. You seek connection over performance, depth over comfort. You begin to surround yourself with people who reflect and support your growth, rather than those who reinforce your masks. Your relationships deepen because you are no longer hiding. And the paradox is this: the more you show up as your true self, the more others feel safe to do the same. Your authenticity becomes a mirror, a permission slip, a quiet revolution. And yet, this path is not always comfortable. You may lose people, opportunities, or approval along the way. You may experience periods of confusion, solitude, or self-doubt. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of shedding. You are peeling away the layers of false success, the ones that were never really yours. And what remains, though quieter, is real. Eventually, you will come to a place where you can look at your life, not through the eyes of the world, but through the eyes of your own soul, and say, yes, this is true, this is mine. That moment may not be loud, it may not be celebrated, but it is sacred, because in that moment, you will have found what so many chase but never touch: peace, clarity, and the freedom of being fully yourself. This is what success looks like when measured not by externals, but by essence. It is not found in comparison, but in congruence. Not in what you have achieved, but in who you have become. It is not defined by the roles you play, but by the soul you reveal. So when you find yourself caught in the race, exhausted by the performance, or unsure of your worth, pause. Turn inward. Ask yourself not, what more can I do? But, what more of myself can I become? This is the real work. This is the real reward. Because at the end of your life, you will not ask how many people followed you. You will ask if you followed yourself. And so, as we stand at the edge of our ordinary days, we are faced with a quiet yet urgent choice: to live reactively, chasing borrowed ideas of success, or to live deliberately, routed in love, guided by truth, and awake to the unfolding of our inner life. The power of love is not something we find outside ourselves. It is the creative, healing, and unifying force that lives within us. It asks us to become whole, to listen deeply, to live authentically, and to transform even our pain into a source of strength. It reminds us that real success is not defined by applause, but by alignment. It is not how high we climb, but how deeply we connect with who we truly are. Let us not confuse achievement with meaning. Let us not mistake noise for clarity. The world may tell you to perform, to prove, to produce, but your soul calls you to something greater. To realize yourself fully, to create from love, to live with presence, and to become someone whose life reflects not just effort, but essence. Begin each day with the courage to listen within. Trust what you find there. Follow it with devotion. Build a life that is not only successful by the world's standards, but meaningful by your own. Because in the end, love is not what we wait for. It is what we become. And from that becoming, all true success is born.